Well, I'm joined now from Tel Aviv by Mark Regev, senior advisor to the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and a former Israeli ambassador to the UK. Good evening to you. Was it you?
Apparently not. We're the whole time gathering more information. And now the highest probability appears to be that this was an Islamic Jihad rocket. And as crazy as that sounds, the statistics are clear. In past rounds of fighting, some 33% of Islamic Jihad rockets that were fired into Israel fell short and landed in Gaza. Now, our intelligence is reporting to us that there was Islamic Jihad fire which was over the vicinity of the hospital, and apparently a rocket malfunctioned and hit the hospital. We had such documented case in the last round of fighting, I think it was in 2021, where everyone said Israeli atrocity, we hit a target, we killed an innocent family, and in the end, we could prove with a video that it was their rocket that was launched, and we actually saw the rocket land. Now, of course, in Gaza, there is no independent civil society. The Hamas has ruled there for 16 years, and all the voices that you interview will say Israel, 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 because that's the party line. But I urge caution. I urge people to think about this. You've got to hold off judgment. We don't believe it's us. We're still looking, of course, but we don't believe it was us. And all the evidence seems to indicate that this was a rocket fired by Islamic Jihad. That's Hamas's younger brother, its twin terrorist organization. And it was their ordinance. We do not target hospitals. Let's be clear. Israel does not target hospitals.
Well, it's not just the party line, is it? I've stood at the border myself. I've seen your airstrikes on apartment buildings. You have the capability to cause utter devastation to the people of Gaza City. That's what's happened tonight. The real fact of it is, whatever is the cause of this, it might be too late. The touch paper has already been lit. Do you understand that?
But if the paper is being lit, to use your metaphor, by a lie, by Hamas propaganda, blaming Israel for something that it didn't do, surely you should be saying that. And we should be trying to make the world understand that Hamas, which has no qualms about killing brutally innocent Israelis, has few qualms about lying. Why would they admit that it was a terrorist missile that killed their own people? Of course, blame Israel. But it's our job, and I would say it's your job in the media, to get to the truth and not to parrot just the Hamas position. Israel is responsible for everything that goes wrong. I mean, obviously, Hamas will say that.
Well, how quickly can you prove that it wasn't you if it wasn't? The point is that people in places like Ramallah, in fact, across the Middle East, will blame Israel. And therefore, I put it to you that your proof may come too late.
That's possible. I mean, there are people across the entire Middle East who are willing to believe the worst things about Israel and about Jews. They have all sorts of stereotypes, yes, but surely responsible people must hold off judgment until the facts are in, and I urge you to do the same.
Even before this incident, we heard from the World Health Organization today that 2,800 people in Gaza had lost their lives, 11,000 had been injured. Those weren't all misfired rockets. You were causing civilian deaths in Gaza, and many will now say that after this, enough is enough.
So, first of all, I know there's a tragedy unfolding in Gaza. This is a war that has taken too many lives on our side. But those numbers you quote, they stem from the Hamas-controlled Ministry of Health in Gaza. That's where those numbers come from. How many of those were combatants? If you tell me that all those 2,000 were Hamas combatants, I'd say to you, good, that's who we want to kill. But of course, the Hamas Ministry of Health isn't telling you how many were combatants and how many were civilians. And of course, they're telling you, their impression is, oh, they're all innocent people. No. You have to be skeptical. This is a regime, a Hamas regime, that just a week ago, you saw the sort of brutality it's capable of doing, and yet you're believing its press releases.
Can the US president still come tomorrow? I see you've just put out a media note about the timings of his meetings with Mr. Netanyahu. It's best he doesn't come, isn't it?
I disagree. I disagree. And it's not just he's coming. Your prime minister, the British prime minister is supposed to come. The French president is supposed to come. The German chancellor was here today. And the truth is the world has been outraged not by Hamas propaganda, but by Hamas's actions. The world has been outraged by the brutal massacre of innocent people on October 7th. The world has been outraged by the beheadings, by the ISIS-type violence, by the lining up of people and shooting them in pits, the murdering of babies, the kidnapping of some 200 people and abducting them back to that is the true story here, not Hamas's propaganda and this sort of false equivalence between a democratic society that is defending itself from a terrorist threat and between a group of ISIS-type terrorists who butcher Israelis and treat their own people, the people they claim to resent, even worse.
Well, so Mohammed Abbas, the Palestinian leader, has already pulled out of that four-way meeting in Amman, in Jordan. We'll see what happens with the Egyptian president, even King Abdullah of Jordan. We'll see what happens with that. You know, this idea of consensus over meeting Joe Biden is already falling apart. You know, the moral equivalence of what happened in that terrible, terrible day on October the 7th, does that allow one war crime to follow another?
I disagree. There's no comparison. You're saying they commit war crimes, we commit war crimes, we're all equally bad. That's not true. Can I remind you that when the international community united to fight ISIS, yes, ISIS controlled territory. In that territory, there were cities. Famously in Mosul in 2016, in defeating ISIS, there were, unfortunately, civilian casualties. But defeating ISIS was the goal, and the world is better with ISIS defeated. It's the same with Hamas. We are trying to avoid civilian casualties. The people of Gaza are not our targets. Hamas is our target. Hamas is responsible for this war. Israel is responding to violence that was inflicted upon it. We are targeting Hamas's military machine. We don't want to see innocent civilians caught up in the crossfire. I'd like to be able to tell you at Sky News that we can promise there won't be a single civilian hurt in this war. But you know that's impossible. There hasn't been a war in modern history where civilians haven't been caught up in the crossfire. But what I can say as the representative of a democratic society, we will make every effort. We will make every effort to minimize civilian casualties. Hamas, however, does the opposite. When we ask Palestinians to leave combat areas... You may want to do that,
but it is not happening. It is not
Why do you say that? Because you believe
endlessly,
Hamas propaganda that Israel is responsible for these deaths? That's the basis of your
Are you saying that every image we see on our television screens has been fabricated from somewhere else, that every child we see pulled from rubble and taken to a hospital running out of supplies is a fake picture?
And in Mosul, there weren't difficult pictures as well. War is very, very difficult. We don't want to see civilian casualties. But who is responsible for this war?
Are you saying, there is collateral damage of civilians, or are you not saying that?
I am saying the civilian population of Gaza is suffering. I am saying that there are civilian casualties. I'm saying we are making a maximum effort to minimize those casualties, as Britain does when it fights wars. We don't want to see civilian casualties. But we cannot allow Hamas to have immunity, just as you didn't give ISIS immunity when you defeated it in 2016 in Mosul. Don't judge Israel by a standard you don't judge yourself. That's not fair.
Well, you know, that was led by Iraqi and Kurdish forces in Mosul. I happened to be there
with British support, correct? With British support, British air power. No, I think the British did the right thing in defeating Hamas, in defeating ISIS. They did the right thing. They saved the world from evil people. ISIS had a territorial caliphate in Iraq and Syria. But can't you understand that Hamas has got the same sort of terror enclave? They've taken over territory. They've butchered our people. They treat the people of Gaza terribly. It's time Hamas was finished. We will destroy their military machine and we will dismantle their political structure. And in doing so, we are actually doing a favor to the people of Gaza.
In destroying Hamas, you will destroy Gaza. Do you accept that that is
I don't accept that. I don't accept
your campaign? Well,
I don't accept that.
You yourself
think
say that Hamas
I don't
hides
accept
in
the rationale.
that they use human shields to protect themselves. So how do you get to Hamas without killing civilians, which is what seems to be happening?
So we are going to make a maximum effort to hit the Hamas machine without doing what we can to avoid civilian casualties. Are you telling me
How many
that
apartment
because
blocks have
but
been
I'm
destroyed
asking,
in
may I
Gaza
please
already?
answer? Allow me to
Your
answer the
satellite
question. Are you
surveillance could probably
saying
count
that
for
Hamas
you
has
how many
immunity?
apartment buildings you have destroyed, how many civilian buildings you have destroyed in Gaza City
We
and the
don't
north
target
of the
civilian
Gaza Strip.
structures. That is incorrect what you've said. We don't target civilian structures.
So what are those high-rise buildings we've seen destroyed? In Beit Hanun, on the border, that I've seen with my own eyes.
They are Hamas targets.
What, all of the buildings?
What we target are Hamas strongholds. And here you have to understand, and please let me finish a sentence. Hamas embeds itself under the civilian population, under the city of Gaza. There's a network of tunnels. There are rocket sites to launch rockets to attack our people. There are arms depots. There are command and communications. Hamas has got a subterranean, under civilian neighborhoods. They have a huge military machine. Now, are you saying that Israel is supposed to give them immunity? No, we've asked the civilians to leave the area. But we're doing what Britain would do in our case.
There has to be another way. There has to. Don't bring Britain into this. There has to be another way.
The other way is to give Hamas immunity. That's the other way, to allow these butchers to kill our people and just turn the other cheek. Would you do that in Britain?
This is not about Britain. This is about what you're doing.
It's Israelis dying. So
the
then we're not
areas
so worried.
in Gaza which have been flattened, which is the homes
you
of
are holding Israel to
even in Khan Yunis, where you're asking people to flee, there have been airstrikes.
You are holding Israel to a standard that you don't hold your own country to. That's the truth. That's the truth.
I'm just saying that this is not about
responding to violent, barbaric terrorism.
Final thought, when will you be able to give your truth that you say this was not an airstrike by Israel?
I hope as soon as possible. But I urge you, why are you believing Hamas propaganda? At least be skeptical.
Mark Regev, thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
I'm joined now.